we want to get in touch with you. But I know everybody signed up not to listen to me, but to listen to Margaret Moore with her talk. So Joanne, if you're ready, could you introduce our speaker for today?
Yes, we'd be happy to. Margaret is co-founder and co-director of the Institute of Coaching at McLean Hospital, a Harvard Medical School affiliate, and a course director of the annual Coaching in Leadership and Healthcare Conference offered by Harvard Medical School. Margaret Moore has an MBA, and she goes by Coach Meg, and she's the founder and CEO of Well Coaches Corporation. She's a 17-year veteran of the biotechnology industry in the US, UK, Canada, and France. She served in executive roles at 3 companies, which later joined Sanofi, and served as CEO and COO of 2 early-stage biotech companies. In 2000, Margaret shifted from high-tech medicine to build the field of coaching in healthcare and wellness, and founded Well Coaches Corporation, a strategic partner of the American College of Sports Medicine, now a standard bearer for professional coaches in healthcare and wellness. The Well Coaches School of Coaching has trained more than 9,000 health and wellness coaches in 45 countries. And with no further ado, Margaret.
Thank you both. I'm just going to get my screen going on here, and then we'll get started. So first, my deep condolences to all of you who feel the loss of Maggie Stern. In fact, I feel her presence with us today, and I hope that my talk lights us all up and keeps her spirit going. I have been spending the last 17 years really bringing coaching to the healthcare and wellness space. It's been a long road, and as a biologist by nature and training, I have a deep, deep interest in the nature of human nature, which led me to the topic that I'm going to share with you today called Coaching the Multiplicity of Mind. There's more information at organizedyouremotions.com. I have a book that just came out a month ago if you want to dive in further. I love the Walt Whitman quote, do I contradict myself? Very well then, I contradict myself. I am large, I contain multitudes. All of us as coaches know that there is so much in the nature of human nature that we don't understand, and that it really does feel like multitudes. And this notion was brought to life in a very creative fashion in the Disney Pixar movie last year. Maybe you saw it, Inside Out. And this picture here is the portrayal of an 11-year-old girl's mind. And in her mind, she has 5 characters. I won't go into detail, but suffice to say that these characters are all very interesting and have a lot of evolution to do over the course of the movie, and really bring to life the idea that our mind is truly multiple. Multiplicity of mind models go back a long way. They go back to Freud with his 3 parts, the id, the ego, the superego. I've spent 4 years getting deeply schooled in internal family systems practice. Psychosynthesis is a major model of multiplicity that is taught to coaches in Europe, and some of you may have heard of voice dialogue. So there are a number of traditions. It's worth saying that we will never be able to prove, in any way that I can think of, the biological existence of these multiple entities in our minds. So for all of us, they serve as a different way of thinking about being human, which I have found to be unbelievably helpful to me, and I'm delighted to share. I could not be here without Dick Schwartz, who is the guru behind internal family systems practice. I've learned so much from his work. I couldn't possibly have gotten to where I am today. Well, when I started training in internal family systems, I began to meet various parts of my own inner family. And what I concluded fairly early on was that there had to be a strengths-based scaffolding for the notion of having an inner family. And it was not a fast process, but I ultimately arrived on these 9 characters that are in my mind. And then I verified that others had the same kind of universal characters with several hundred coaching clients. Now, it doesn't mean there's not more, and I think this is a very complex situation, but I do believe that each of us has each of these characters in our minds, and as such, it's a really useful way for coaches to think about coaching clients. I published a scientific paper, a hypothesis paper 3 years ago, Coaching the Multiplicity of Mind, a Strengths-Based Approach. And basically the premise is that there are 9 life forces that operate as entities that are kind of like independent personalities. And my hunch is that these 9 are the structure of our needs, drives, our values, and our capacities. So there's sort of one scaffolding that underpins all of these life forces. And what's very interesting is that when you relate to these parts of you in third person, interesting things happen. And in fact, this paper I'm citing here talks about the fact that we become wiser and we perform better and our attitudes are healthier when we talk to ourselves in third person. By that I mean, I have a part of me that loves adventure. I have a part of me that loves to stay home and have stability. I have a part of me that gets angry when this happens. And that moving oneself, giving oneself a little distance from these parts of you, all by itself, if you do nothing more than try that out, all by itself makes a big difference in our functioning. So my sense is that our emotions then are the messengers of our genes. They're the messengers of these life forces. They're a sensory system that tell us whether our needs are being met or not. And so then our negative emotions become the messengers telling us when our needs are not being met. And our positive emotions tell us when our needs are being met. So the reason the book is called Organize Your Emotions, Optimize Your Life is your emotions contain the code of your genes. They tell you what your needs and values and strengths are. I won't go into this, but if you happen to be an expert or interested in Enneagram, one of the things that helped me sort all this out early on was mapping these 9 life forces to the 9 Enneagram personality types. So that's something you could look at later if that's of interest. So given that I'm a biologist and I'm in the health and wellness space, I think about what thriving. Thriving is a biological term. So if you're a flower or a tree, there are certain nutrients and ingredients that you need in order to thrive, in order to have your genes smile. So basically when your needs are being met, your drives are being served, your values are in action, and your capacities are being used, then you are thriving. And each of us has our own code for thriving. So what comes out of this model is that there are plenty of opposites in play. Parts of us have one need and another part has the absolute opposite. So for instance, autonomy, our autonomy life force needs to serve self. It's concerned with self-interest, and that's necessary and essential. Our relational part, on the other hand, needs to serve others first. Clearly, those two things can't happen in the same moment. You can't serve your own needs and serve others' needs in exactly the same moment. So that's an example of competing needs and drives. And that, of course, what leads to ambivalence and why we often get stuck and can't move forward in areas of our lives. I have another presentation, which I am not doing today, but just to show you, you can find this article online, Brain Breaks Elude Me. It's at Psychology Today. So here's a decisional balance. Parts of me want to have regular brain breaks, and more parts of me do not. And this is what ambivalence looks like. I have an imbalance here. Even though brain breaks are good for my energy and great for creativity, I have other parts of me that are not in favor. And so even though I'm moving forward in resolving this ambivalence, it's deeply rooted in some deeply held needs. So then the question is, who are we coaching? Because we all have dominant voices, voices that have been sculpted by our lives, voices that are particularly strong in our genetic makeup. And so when we are coaching our clients, in fact, most of the time we're not accessing all of them. We're accessing the parts that have been well sculpted, maybe even over sculpted in life. This is the map of the 9 parts and their underlying agendas, needs, values, capacities. So this is a takeaway for you. It's also on the website at organizeyouremotions.com. So the way I want to introduce you, and this is a very quick tour, is by helping you think about the coaching questions that would draw out each of these life forces. There are many ways to use this model, and I only have time to share one. What I do for myself every morning is I spend an hour or so with an inventory or roll call. So I decode my emotional state in the moment by touching base with each of these. In my coaching sessions, when I use this model, I do a tour for people so they can get access to 9 discrete and independent perspectives on any particular situation. And as we know the saying that the wisdom coaches, our clients have the answers, this is where the answers are, in particular the meaning maker or our inner coach. And it's the wisdom of the meaning maker that I tap into every morning that brings me a small iota of equanimity to start my day. So these are the coaching questions which I'm going to take you through. Now, these 9 entities are all familiar to you. There's no surprises here. I think the reason I was able to find that they operate as discrete life forces and even subpersonalities is because I knew them deeply through training coaches and understanding these dimensions. Each of these life forces is well studied by a number of scientists and scientific groups. So they're well grounded in science and they're all familiar. What I'm adding to this discussion is that they really do operate as entities in our psyches, which means there's a whole lot more capacity out there to access than we typically do. And the other thing I'm going to do when I walk you through is I'm going to embody these life forces. And I'm going to ask you to tune into different parts of your body with each one so that you can plug into that energy state, which I hope will help you evoke what that is for you, and perhaps help others tune in as well. So one last thing before I jump in. Of the 9, another way to look at them is to organize them into 3 teams, because this helps us see what are some of the common patterns that are alive in today's world. So for instance, the 3 I call the performers are pretty much overused by all of us, particularly in the workplace. The achiever, the standard setter, we are a society that is heavily focused on achievement. We are very much focused on being competent and competent, and we are also very focused on getting things done, achieving goals, being organized. And these are the 3 in our lives that are overused. So one of my messages today is to think about perhaps less focus on the performers. Now, the three that we draw out as coaches are three that are underused for most of us. Our drive for self-determination, in particular our drive for autonomy and marching to our own drummer. Our curious adventurer that wants to take risks, that wants new. And the creative, which is all about being spontaneous and impulsive and coming up with brilliant new ideas and perspectives. So these are three things we draw out a lot in coaching. And then the other team are those that I call the grounders. They're the foundation for being human. Our relationships, which are key to our being interconnected in the world. The body regulator, which is all about our physical energy and health. And then the meaning maker, which is what grounds us in terms of the larger or smaller meanings in our moments and our larger life drives. So let's do a quick run through of the 9. So to tune into the adventurer, imagine moving your mind into your senses, into your fingertips, into all your whole sensory experience to tap into this. This part of us is the adventurer. It's curious, it loves the new, it wants to take risk, it wants change, and it's full of zest for the novelty in life. If you know Clay Christensen at Harvard Business School, he was recently quoted saying that the level of curiosity in Harvard Business School students has dropped dramatically in the last 20 years. So this is an area that is in short supply, and which is why the curious coach brings so much value. Because coaching is really about the adventure and the adventure of change. And so we are helping people draw out their inner adventurer. We're born with this need for novelty and risk and new, but then it gets kind of drummed out of us because so many parts of us and parts of others want to be in control. And being adventurous is in fact not being in control. It's being out of your comfort zone, not safe and secure. So not being in control is where this part of us lives. We don't know the answers. We don't know what's going to happen next. And this is where we live when we're in the change process and the capacity we need to draw on. So then the coaching question, one of many, but this is the simplest one, is what are you curious about? What's new about this situation? Next, let's move to autonomy, because arguably the main reason that coaches facilitate and don't direct is because we are drawing out this very strong need of humans for autonomy. And if you know DC and Ryan's self-determination theory, they would say autonomy is numero uno. It is the most fierce drive of humans. It's about our self-interest and self-determination. It's about being authentically ourselves. It's our ability to choose. It's our ability to be in control of our destiny. It's the life force that gets us out of home and into the adult world. It's a huge, huge energy. To tap into this, move your energy, your mind into your voice box, into your vocal cords. So this part of us does not like being told what to do. And if our relational steps in, then we comply. We do what's good for us, or we do, I'm sorry about the phone ringing. We do what we can do to avoid conflict. But when we comply, we're not really autonomous. And it's a very quick step into defiance from there, which is I'm not doing what you want me to do. Autonomy is so strong that we'll do things that are not good for us in order to hold on to it. If you've got teenagers, you know exactly what I mean. So when we tell other people what to do, when we want to fix them, rescue them, be right, judge them, be better than them, control them, then we bring on defiance and rebelliousness in this part of us, this voice of ours. So that's why in coaching we ask, what do you want to happen? What do you really want to have happen? Because when we bring our autonomy life force into the picture, it has a lot to contribute. So next is the meaning maker. I'm not sure where the meaning maker is in terms of its energy. You can move yourself to the halo above your head. You can think of about it as your soul energy. You can think of about it as the totality of the whole energy field of being human, because it is the whole. It brings all the parts together in harmony. This is the part of us that asks the big questions, that is comfortable sitting in the big questions. It zooms out. It thinks about the higher purpose of things. Gratitude and awe are ways for it to be in our lives. It's where the wisdom lives. It's the inner coach. It's the transcendent part. It's the best self part. You know, what am I grateful for? What is awesome? What's my purpose larger than myself in this moment, today, in my life? And of course, you all know Viktor Frankl and Man's Search for Meaning. He would say that this part of us is a key to mental health and human flourishing and is critical in helping us deal with adversity. So to activate, engage the meaning maker, ask, what is the higher meaning or purpose of your desired change? So next is the standard setter. This is the strongest part of me. In Enneagram terms, I am an achiever. And it is definitely a part that rules my life. And one of the big benefits of this work for me has been to see this as a part of me and not all of me. That was the first big shift that I made, that it is not all of me, although it is by far the strongest part of me. So this part of us, I think, evolved from the original hierarchies of living organisms. Think about the beehive. Every bee has its own place. It's got to know whether it's doing its job. So it's monitoring and comparing and making sure it's doing what it needs to do to not get kicked out on its bee butt. And of course, all of this evolved towards the hierarchy that we have today in organizations and society. So this part of us sets the bar. It decides, it's the leader. It decides what the bar should be. It measures. It judges. It compares. It thinks about fairness. It's the part of us that is all about self-esteem. And because it's the judge, it's the source of judgment, of the opposite of which is non-judgment. So we actually have to dial this part of us down when we want to be non-judgmental. And because it can be a critic, it can be a real taskmaster and a difficult part to handle. It hates weakness. It hates failure. It doesn't like injustice. It doesn't like when things are not okay. So it's a tough one to live with for all of us. It's also not necessarily humble. And so we need to dial it down when humility is important. And one of the ways we can do that is to ask it to remember that in at least in some areas, we are all equals. And that humility, in one dimension, this is my favorite way of thinking about humility, is that when two people are together, we are equal. We're both doing our best with the resources we have. We dial off the judgment. We dial down the comparisons. We focus on we are equals in this moment. So that's not easy for this part of us. And that's definitely a more enlightened way to be for this part of us I call the standard setter. The other new science is around the value of self-compassion as a better motivator than the judge. That instead of using a stick to create fear, that feeling compassion for our suffering is in fact, at least in some circumstances, a better motivator. Makes us feel more confident and secure. So this is a part of us, again, oversculpted by society, tends to go too far, and we've all got to be aware of that in our own inner worlds as well as for others. However, when it's at its best, it helps us set the right goal or outcome. And so it's important to engage it around what goal or outcome do you want to choose. So next we've got the body regulator, which is the grounder, the ultimate grounder, because our physical bodies are our connection to the earth, to nature. And they are where we get our vitality, our health, the code for balance, for stability, and for sustainability lives in this part of us. To tune into it, you might go into your lungs. Oh, and I just remembered, I forgot to tell you, the standard setter, I think, is in the core. Our body regulator, though, I think, lives in the rhythm of being human, in particular our breathing. Balancing your mind's velocity, you know how fast our minds go, with your body's real world inertia, thinking about the in-breath and the out-breath, is what makes being present so difficult and needed. It's very easy to miss the signs our bodies tell us because it has a different rhythm than, say, the standard setter or the executive manager or the parts of our mind that are busier and move faster. So we have to slow down to really listen to our bodies. And I co-authored a piece with a collaborator, Jim, and I'm blanking on Jim's last name. It'll come to me. Jim Gavin, wonderful man. It's a few years ago since we wrote this. I guess that's why my memory is fading. And we defined something called body intelligence, based on the same parameters as emotional intelligence, which involves self-awareness, listening to your body's needs, learning and being knowledgeable about what your body needs, and then being engaged. So that's one way to think about the body regulator. So the coaching question might be then, if your body had a voice, what advice would it give you? So next we have confidence. This is a beautiful picture of a lioness. We think about the lion as the animal that radiates confidence in the jungle. Confidence is one of the simpler but very powerful parts of the human psyche. The standard setter has all kinds of different ways of operating and being alive in us. Confidence is really about our competence, our ability to do things. And of course, it operates across many, many life dimensions, so it gets its complexity in that way. But it is, in a way, I think, one of the purer life forces. Because if we don't feel strong, we procrastinate. We don't move forward. And when the standard setter sets the bar too high, this is the part of us that feels sad and depleted and has difficulty and hence procrastinates. It predicts our success. Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. So it's a very important dimension of being human. And one way to get more competent is to use more of our capacities. So for instance, if you think about this young man trying to decide between the apple or the brownie or the cake, we could use some of these capacities I've been talking about to deal with that. So the adventurer might say, what will happen if I have the apple? Be curious. The meaning maker might say, what would my wise self decide to do? Confidence might say, what can I learn from this situation? How can I become more competent? And then the creative might ask, what's a creative solution here? Or relational, how can I help someone else by making this decision? So this is an example of how we can use the other capacities to help our confidence. The growth mindset really serves our capacity for confidence, because when we focus on growing and learning, then we're getting more confident and our confidence smiles. When we focus on looking good, which is what the standard setter cares about, then that can work against us if the change we're pursuing is difficult. So the coaching question here is, what would improve your confidence? The confidence in the body, so if you want to tune into this, I think is the shoulders and the hips. It's the core, it's the strength of our torso that provides our physical confidence. And one of the reasons I think that I've always pursued fitness, and in particular being physically strong, which I've been doing since my late teens, is because I'm small, and I think that the sense of physical strength all by itself has a big impact on my overall confidence. So let's move to the relational. This part of us is in our hearts. So that's the part of your body you might tune into. This part of us puts others first. It would give our lives for our children or for somebody else. So that's true, putting others first at its most substantial. It has others' interests at heart, our benevolence. It's compassionate to others. It feels others' emotions, good and bad. It's connected. It's loyal, and it's trustworthy. So it's a very big life force. And for all of us as coaches, this is the part of us that is served, because in our coaching relationships, we truly do put others first. One way to activate it for our clients is to help people connect with role models that they can relate to, which is a very important way of building confidence, in fact, is to imagine others as your inspiration. And of course, as coaches, we are part of a client's support team, and almost nothing gets done in life alone. We always go further with others. So a coaching question here might be, how might other people help you? So next is the creative. So this is, of course, the heart of coaching, because it's the creative process of new ideas, new perspectives, new insights, which is the ingredient for change that accumulates over time to create lasting change. This is the part of the human psyche that loves spontaneity, to have fun, to play, to invent. It is not a linear, logical thinker. It loves out of the box. It loves free association. Some of the earliest examples of creativity are in chimps. Although we're finding more species do things creatively. And in this picture here, you see the chimp looking at the bananas hung from the ceiling and figuring out how to pile the boxes to get there. So change in the brain is a creative process. When you have a new idea or insight, neurons connect in new ways, as portrayed in this graphic, where there's a burst of energy and release of neurochemicals when neurons connect in new ways. And this is the creative process of building new networks in the brain. And that's what's happening when we elicit creativity in our clients' minds. So coaching is a creative process, from insight to turned into action to insight to action to insight to action, that over time leads our clients to have a whole new network in their brains that are connecting their emotions and their behaviors and their thoughts and their memories. All of that together is a creative process to a new network in the brain, which is the lasting change that we help our clients reach. So what would be a creative approach would be a question here. Creativity, I think, maps to the right side of our brains. So you might put your minds there when you want to move into a creative place, particularly back more than frontal brain, where our imagination lives, where a lot of our creative regions are. So last is the executive manager, and I put the executive manager last because it's definitely developed for many of us in our lives. The part of us that organizes plans, that manages time, that's being productive, that self-regulates. This is the part of us that sets goals, makes sure that we reach them, puts the to-do list together every day, makes sure things get checked off. And for many of us, it's overused. Now, if you're a creative soul, it may be underused. If you've got attention deficits, if you tend to be really impulsive and spontaneous, this part of you may need an upgrade. But for a lot of us, it's overused. And so it's important that we balance it out with some of these other capacities. It's invaluable when it comes to keeping us on task and keeping us focused, because it manages all the parts, the distractions from inside, from our own limbic system, all the emotions, the pop-ups that come up when we want to stay on task. And it also manages all distractions externally as well. It's very good at keeping us focused in a deep way on a particular task, which is very important today because a lot of us have become fractured as we multitask more and more. So a coaching question here might be, how would you like to organize things to take a first step? How do you want to reach clarity around this? What would be a way to focus on this? And so I think the executive manager lives up in our left prefrontal brain, up right in the forehead. If you ever get tension headaches, you might find them right there because of the intense thinking and analyzing and organizing that we're doing always in our brains. So that's the tour of the 9 life forces, capacities, subpersonalities, whatever framework works best for you, and a way to think about them and a way to access them, if not in any given coaching session, certainly over time. So with that, let me take a pause and open it up for questions.
Thank you, Margaret. That was amazing and awesome, and that was just very interesting. I asked Joanne to keep track of the Q&A. Joanne, are there any questions?
Yeah, there is only one in here, so out there in the cyber world, if you can put your questions in the chat box, that would be fantastic. And the one question I have to ask is, typically we would guess that some people are heavier on some of these personalities. Is this what you call them, personalities, Margaret?
So the sort of psychological term is subpersonalities.
Subpersonalities.
But I like to think of them as life forces.
Okay.
Or entities. So it's or inner family or inner team members. So there's lots of different options here.
Now, how do you explain to your clients that you're not, talking about problem personalities?
Well, yes. So this is always the issue because part of the message of this work is that it's natural and normal to have multiple, and ambivalence and inner conflict is the way we evolved.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. And that there's really no such thing as a difficult part of your personality, in that it is simply trying to get your attention, that it's to tell you its needs aren't being met.
Okay.
And then from there, there's a couple of ways to go. If the difficult personality is in fact related to some unhealed or undigested wound or pain from a long time ago, then its message is that please come get me and help me heal. I've been trying to get your attention for a long time. Please help. And so that might be, the message there might be to go get some help to heal something that's old. And when I do my journaling every morning, I try to distinguish between what's difficult in the moment versus what's old and feels like a kind of downward spiral that I can't pull it's like a bottomless pit. So when your emotions are difficult, either there are needs, there's something to be learned from them. And so it's important then to treat them as a valued member of your family that needs some help. Mm-hmm. And as coaches, we're not healers. So it's not our role to go there, but we can help people maybe notice that there's something difficult here that perhaps would benefit from some processing and digesting. Okay. And that there are techniques and technologies out there today to heal, so that we don't have to suffer with these difficult parts of ourselves. We can get help, and we can settle this, this agitation that we carry. So I think there's really real hope in there. As Dick Schwartz always says, all parts are welcome. All part of you.
Yeah. Okay, and, we do have about
you can't get rid of them. It's like having a family member. You can't get rid of your family.
Yeah. Okay, Mark, great, thank you. We do have about 6 questions here. See if we can move through them all. So the second one is, does your book go over what you're sharing today?
The book is an overview. Basically, there's one chapter dedicated to each. So you can really understand the nature of each one and appreciate how it operates in your life. Okay. Then I am going to be launching next year, probably March or so, month-long courses for a deeper dive. So the book doesn't teach you necessarily how to tune into each one, because they each have their own radio signal. And because most of us, like I didn't realize that I was being dominated by the standard setter until I found these other parts of me and realized, my gosh, they're very different, and they don't have the same agendas. So the body tuning in, the body part tuning in is one way to kind of help find them, but I think people need a deeper training. So I'm working on that as one thing, and then I have another talk on ambivalence. I showed you a little bit of that, which I'd be happy. I will be presenting it for the first time next week, and I'll do more of that. So there's a lot of different ways to use this. I did a workshop at the Harvard Coaching Conference in September, where I used it as a way to help people figure out which parts of them need more positive experiences so they thrive more. Then I have my inner roll call every day, where I interview each one as a way of decoding my own emotional weather report. So lots of different ways to use them. Once you realize that this might be a structure that you can relate to, then you can use it in a lot of different ways. So more to come.
Okay, great, thank you. And then Astrid is asking if we will get a copy of the PowerPoint, and the answer to that is yes, it will be in PDF form. And if you ever use this information, please do give proper credit. Natalie, is it going to be on our website, or we're going to send it to everybody?
We will send it to the participants.
Okay, it'll be sent to you. Great.
Yeah.
And, Nanor asked, are there certain ways, exercises to increase the life forces that we might be lesser in? She said she noticed journaling is one way. Are there other ways?
Yeah. So I depend on journaling. So I use Evernote and my iPad. So every morning between 5 and 6, I sit down in my chair and with my iPad, and I've got 4 years of morning journalings now. I've been doing this every morning. I think I've only missed 2 or 3 mornings in 4 years. And so I basically walk through and tune in, and I find if I don't have the discipline of writing it down, I get lost in the voices. So I have to have that discipline. So that seems to work well. I have trouble finding it in the, when you're in, what I didn't get into is that the mindful self part, there is an orchestrator of all this that is, and eventually you can start to say, oh, okay, that part of me is up. But in the day, I have trouble decoding it. Like I have to sit down and go through it. And I've been doing this for a while, so it's not that easy to catch it on the fly. So there needs to be some kind of discipline where down the road, I'd love to help people make their own emojis for their different parts, because they each have their own personalities. And what you saw in the emojis are really what these parts told me they wanted. Like the creative wants to be a hip hop dancer. Like, what am I going to do with that? Right.
Yeah. Right.
I'm 58 years old. I don't, where am I going to? So you can hear the inner dialogue. This part says, I don't care. I want to go in. I want to take hip hop dancing lessons. And someday I probably will, but it's not winning that one right now. But that's what it wanted to show me it's wearing. And there's no way it was going to wear anything conservative. So, so that's how that's how I kind of found these personalities. Like I thought my body regulator, like cardio, right? Because I like to run. But it turns out, no, it would rather sit and do it. It wants me to do yoga more often. It's actually more interested in the quieter, whereas the standard setter wants to run, right? It wants to be. So the emojis has actually been helpful to kind of understand, like, who is this part of me? Like, what is it really? What is its character? And that's very valuable, because when you start to see these as characters in their inner drama, then they start to become who they are, and it's fascinating. It's fun.
Yeah,
it's a lot of fun to meet these parts of you that are not necessarily the ones that drive the show.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, Gordon asked, how do you introduce the concept of multiplicity of the mind to a client before utilizing your coaching questions? We went over that a little bit already.
Yeah. Well, so that was one of the reasons to get a book out. And so the book is a Harvard Health book, Organize Your Emotions, Optimize Your Life. My co-author is a physician, Eddie Phillips, who writes about how he uses it with patients. I have about a dozen articles on it. And so I just share the articles. I share the one about me and brain breaks, because, so you really, I basically, show what it's like for me inside out, because I wasn't very comfortable in doing that, but I found that if I show people my inner team with the emojis, then they trust me more with the idea than if I just say, if I sort of talk about it in this kind of, like, oh, people have this. If I don't really share what it means to me, then it's hard. So that's kind of how I do it. I now I'm out, right? With the book, now I've come out of the closet. So I am very open about it. And sometimes I think people will think I'm crazy, because I'm pretty buttoned down human being, to be honest. So it took a lot to sort of come out and say, this is who I am, and this is what it's like to be me. And I struggle because I have the fiercest autonomy. I mean, really strong need for autonomy. And so what that means in my life, I can't coach full time. I need to coach part time, because if I don't get enough serving myself in coaching, so I need the balance. Where some of you may not have that same need. So it really does determine what makes you thrive. And, it's hard for me to talk about having a need for autonomy, because it sounds like I'm selfish, right? But the truth of the matter is that's who I am. And there's nothing I can do to change that. And so that drives, but yet I have very strong relational. And so I love to coach. I love to help people, but I can't do it all day long. So that just gives you, so when you come out, when you actually really understand the tectonic plates in your personality, then you can be okay with it and be okay with what it means to be you. So it's a big deal to get this at a deep level. And it's a lifelong journey. It doesn't just start today. If you move in this direction, you really have an amazing adventure ahead, really understanding all of you.
Okay, we have, thank you, Margaret. We have two questions. I'm going to read them both to you real quick. So you have, I think, just 2 minutes left. One is asking if this is evidence-based work, and the other one is asking if you worked with attention deficit disorder, and do you need to adapt the way you worked with them? So evidence-based work and ADD.
Yeah, okay. So there is no there is no evidence. There's no way to have evidence that the mind has multiple personalities. You can't take a lid off the brain and see characters running around, right? There's no way that the brain, the technology we have today with imaging of the brain, there's no way to prove it. So we'll never have evidence for this. That's number one. So in that sense, it's a metaphor, it's anecdotal, and it's something to try on. What we do have evidence for, of course, is ambivalence. We know that humans have inner conflicts. We all, and we have different needs that are in conflict. The most important thing to say about the evidence, which I mentioned earlier, is that the 9, each of them as a construct, is extremely well studied. And in the book, I have the resources, some of the better resources that you can lean on. So there's a whole body of work around self-esteem. There's a whole body of work around confidence and competence, creativity. So they all are very well studied constructs. What I've done is to say they're even more than that. If you relate to them as members of your inner family, you get more of a sense of what they are personally, and that's helpful. So the next stage is, in terms of evidence, is to get the word out, which is the purpose of the book and this talk and my writing, and then study the impact of using the model on people's thriving, on coaching outcomes. So that's still to come. So I think you can feel comfortable that the 9 represent well-studied, well-researched constructs, even if you don't want to go down the track of seeing the mind as having multiple subpersonalities. Now, ADD is very interesting because I have coached quite a few people with attention deficits. And what they discover, and this has happened with everyone for me, is that they have a part, the executive manager, that is quite good at organizing and focusing and controlling distractions. But their creative is very strong. And it sits on top of the executive manager and says, you're boring. I don't want to do that. It's boring to organize things. And when someone with attention deficit disorder meets the executive manager, I remember one story where my client imagined his family is sitting around a boardroom. We got to the executive manager and it went like this and turned around and said, F you, you never listen to me. You just ignore me. I am trying to help you. It yelled at him. It was it was such a breakthrough for him because he didn't realize that it's clearly this part of him isn't as strong as his creative. I mean, it's probably 10-to-1 in size, but he actually, so for creatives who have attention deficits, they've actually got to give their executive manager a promotion.
Yeah.
And actually allow it some time every day to organize things. So have faith. It's there. We all have all of these. They're all there. Whether you've listened to them or not, they're there.
Well, acknowledging your family members, right, that live in your head is kind of, I think, the main message. Recognizing that we have those different personalities and acknowledging that they exist and trying to really, validate for who they are is so, super important. It is 1:03 now, so I do feel we're at the end of this webinar. Margaret, this was fascinating. Thank you so much being our speaker for today. We will send out the PDF of Margaret's talk from today. We will be sending out a survey as well to all of you guys. And if you could just answer that, that would be awesome. And I didn't mention it in the beginning, but everybody will get one CCU for this talk. And you'll be receiving the CCU with your survey as well. We have recorded the webinar. We will upload it as soon as we've got Margaret's approval to our website as well. And this is it. So thank you all for attending. And thank you again, Margaret, for this fascinating topic. And I'm definitely going to journal myself to just check in with my all the personalities living in my mind. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being with me today. It's been a great pleasure, and I hope to meet all of you somewhere someday.
That would be great. Thank you so much. And thank you to all the members that checked in.
Thank you, Margaret. Bye.